The warning klaxons blared as Lieutenant Commander Dev Patel fought to keep the research vessel from breaking apart. What should have been a routine exploration mission to Saturn's moon Titan had gone catastrophically wrong when an unexpected spatial anomaly had appeared directly in their flight path. Navigation systems failing. "We're being pulled in," shouted Dev into his comms, knowing full well that his transmission would never reach Earth. The anomaly's interference had cut all communication with mission control the moment they'd been caught in its gravitational field. The ship's hull groaned under the immense pressure as emergency lights bathed the cockpit in an eerie red glow. Dev's fingers flew across the control panel, desperately trying to stabilize their trajectory, but it was futile. The vessel was never designed to withstand forces of this magnitude. "Computer, initiate emergency protocol Omega. Prepare escape pod for launch," Dev commanded, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "Warning, destination unknown. Survival probability, 17%, the AI responded with clinical detachment." Dev grimaced. "Better than 0% here. Launch on my mark." The ship gave one final shudder before being torn apart. Dev felt the violent jolt as his escape pod ejected, tumbling through the anomaly's swirling vortex. His last glimpse of the research vessel showed it disintegrating into the unknown depths of space. Inside the cramped pod, Dev was thrown against his restraints as the small craft spun wildly. The gravitational forces increased, pressing him into his seat with crushing weight. Darkness crept into the edges of his vision as he struggled to remain conscious. Just as the blackness threatened to consume him entirely, the pod broke free of the anomaly's grasp. Through the viewport, an unfamiliar planet loomed large, azure oceans and emerald landmasses beneath swirling violet clouds. Definitely not Titan. Not anywhere in the solar system Dev recognized. The pod's thrusters fired automatically, attempting to slow the descent, but they weren't designed for planetary entry from such velocity. Heat blazed across the exterior as they plummeted through the atmosphere, turning the viewport into a window of fire. "Computer, deploy all drag measures." Dev shouted over the roar of atmospheric entry. The pod shuddered violently as emergency parachutes deployed, immediately shredding in the violent turbulence. The backup measures activated, but Dev knew they wouldn't be enough. He braced himself for impact, mentally reciting the emergency procedures that had been drilled into him during years of training. The crash came with devastating force. Dev's head slammed against the restraint despite the crash gel that had automatically deployed around him. Pain exploded behind his eyes as the pod skidded across an alien landscape, carving a deep furrow through strange blue-green vegetation before finally coming to rest against something solid. Silence fell, broken only by the hiss of escaping pressure and the occasional electrical spark from the pod's damaged systems. Dev hung limply in his restraints, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead. The emergency lights flickered once, twice, and then went dark. When consciousness returned, it came in fragments. Pain. The metallic taste of blood. The smell of burnt circuitry. Dev forced his eyes open, wincing at the sharp stab of light. Through the cracked viewport, he could see an alien sky, lavender instead of blue, with two small moons visible despite the daylight. "Computer, status report," he croaked, his throat dry and raw. No response. The systems were dead. With trembling fingers, Dev released his restraints and immediately fell to the floor of the pod, his legs buckling beneath him. His spacesuit's internal diagnostics flashed warnings about multiple contusions and a possible concussion, but nothing immediately life-threatening. Outside, strange bird-like creatures circled overhead, their calls unlike anything Dev had ever heard. The air readings on his suit indicated a breathable atmosphere, but with higher oxygen content than Earth. The gravity felt slightly lighter. He was alive, but he was completely, utterly alone on an unknown world, with no way to call for help. Dev had survived 3 days in the alien wilderness, rationing the emergency supplies from his crash pod while attempting to repair the damaged communications array. His efforts had proven futile. Whatever spatial anomaly had brought him to this planet had fried most of the pod's electronics beyond repair. The alien environment was both beautiful and terrifying. Massive trees with spiral-shaped trunks soared hundreds of feet into the air, their foliage a mesmerizing pattern of blues and purples that shifted with the breeze. The local fauna seemed equally exotic. Six-legged herbivores with iridescent scales grazed in nearby clearings, while winged creatures that resembled a cross between bats and dragonflies darted through the canopy. Dev had established a small perimeter around his pod, venturing slightly farther each day to collect samples and map the immediate area. His training had prepared him for survival situations, but nothing could have prepared him for the profound isolation of being the only human on an unknown world. On the evening of the fourth day, Dev noticed the temperature dropping rapidly as a strange mist rose from the forest floor. The swirling vapor carried an odd luminescence, casting eerie shadows through the trees. His suit sensors detected no toxins, but something about the phenomenon put him on edge. The mist thickened until visibility was reduced to mere feet. Dev retreated to his pod, sealing the hatch behind him. Through the viewport, he watched as the glowing fog enveloped everything, seeming to pulse with an almost intelligent rhythm. A shadow moved in the mist, something large, moving with deliberate purpose toward the crash site. Dev's hand went instinctively to the emergency plasma cutter, the closest thing to a weapon he had. His heart hammered in his chest as the shape drew closer. Then he saw it, a predator unlike anything in Earth's evolutionary history. It resembled a massive feline, but with 6 limbs and a ridge of bony plates running down its spine. Its eyes glowed a menacing amber in the mist as it stalked toward the pod, clearly having caught Dev's scent. The creature circled the crash site, occasionally rising on its hind legs to scratch at the pod's exterior. Dev held his breath, hoping the reinforced hull would withstand the beast's attention. For nearly an hour, the predator continued its investigation before finally losing interest and slinking back toward the tree line. Dev exhaled in relief, until a sharp crack echoed through the clearing. The predator whirled around, its attention caught by the new sound. Dev peered through the viewport, trying to identify the source, when a brilliant flash of light cut through the mist. The predator recoiled, hissing in pain, before retreating into the forest with surprising speed. In its place stood a figure, humanoid but unmistakably alien. For despite the alien physiology, something about the figure read as distinctly feminine to Dev, was tall and slender, with skin that shimmered with a subtle blue-green iridescence. Her features were delicate yet strong, with large, almond-shaped eyes that contained no whites or irises, only deep pools of swirling silver. Instead of hair, a crown of what appeared to be bioluminescent tendrils framed her face, flowing down her back like living water. The alien wore a form-fitting garment that seemed to be part technology, part living organism, with sections that pulsed with the same bioluminescence as her tendrils. In her hand, she held a device that had presumably created the flash that drove away the predator. Dev stared in amazement as the being approached his pod with cautious curiosity. She examined the crash site methodically, running what appeared to be a scanning device over various sections of the damaged craft. When she reached the viewport, she stopped, her silver eyes widening as they met Dev's. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other, two sentient beings from entirely different evolutionary paths, separated by a thin barrier of reinforced glass. Then, to Dev's astonishment, she raised her hand in a universal gesture of greeting. Slowly, Dev moved toward the hatch, his mind racing. First contact protocols had been drilled into him during training, but they'd always been theoretical. Now, faced with the reality of meeting an alien intelligence, he found himself overwhelmed by the significance of the moment. With trembling hands, he unlocked the hatch and pushed it open, stepping out into the misty clearing. The alien remained perfectly still, observing him with those mesmerizing silver eyes. Up close, Dev could see subtle patterns across her skin, similar to human fingerprints but forming complex, flowing designs. "Hello," Dev said softly, knowing she wouldn't understand the word but hoping his tone would convey peaceful intentions. He raised his empty hands to show he carried no weapons. The alien tilted her head, the luminescent tendrils around her face rippling with changing colors. Then, to Dev's utter shock, she spoke, not in any human language, but in a melodic series of sounds that somehow carried meaning directly into his mind. "Welcome, traveler from beyond," the impression formed in his thoughts. "I am Aara, and you are far from home. You understand me?" Dev stammered, astonished that the alien being, Aara, had somehow communicated directly into his mind. The luminescent tendrils framing Alara's face pulsed with gentle blues and greens as a melodic sound emerged from her lips. Though the sounds were nothing like human speech, Dev somehow perceived clear meaning. "Not your words, but your thoughts and intentions," came the impression in his mind. "My people, the Luminari, communicate through both sound and bioelectric fields. Your brain produces similar fields, though more primitive." Dev struggled to process this revelation. "Are you telepathic?" "Not as you might understand it," Aara replied, her tendrils shifting to a curious purple. "Think of it as translation. Your technology converts electrical signals into sound. My biology does something similar with neural patterns." She gestured toward the darkening forest. "This area is not safe at night. The mist attracts the Noctari, the predator you encountered. My settlement lies beyond those ridges. You will be safe there while we determine how to help you." Dev hesitated, eyeing his damaged pod. "My equipment can be retrieved later," Aara assured him. "The Noctari hunt in packs. More will come." As if on cue, a distant howl echoed through the trees, followed by several answering calls. Dev needed no further convincing. He quickly gathered his emergency pack, portable analyzer, and the plasma cutter. "Lead the way," he said. They traveled through the bioluminescent forest in silence, Dev marveling at how Aara moved with fluid grace across the difficult terrain. Occasionally, she would touch certain plants, causing them to dim their glow and create darker patches in their wake, concealing their trail, Dev realized. After an hour's journey, they crested a hill, and Dev stopped in his tracks, awestruck by the vista below. Nestled in a valley was a sprawling settlement that seemed to have grown organically from the landscape itself. Structures spiraled from the ground in complex geometric patterns, their surfaces pulsing with the same bioluminescence as the forest. Thousands of lights moved about, Luminari going about their evening activities. "My home," Aara said simply, watching Dev's reaction with interest. The settlement was unlike any human city. There were no straight lines or right angles, only curves and spirals that flowed into one another. Many structures appeared to be partially living organisms, their walls responding to the touch of passing Luminari. As they descended into the valley, Dev became acutely aware of his alienness. He was the outsider here, the strange visitor from another world. Several Luminari stopped to observe him, their tendrils flashing with colors that Dev suspected represented curiosity and perhaps concern. Aara led him to a dome-shaped dwelling near the settlement center. Inside, the space was spare but comfortable, with furnishings that seemed to grow from the floor itself. Bioluminescent globes floated near the ceiling, providing soft illumination. "You will stay here," Aara explained. "It is one of our guest dwellings, though we rarely receive visitors from quite so far away." Over the next several days, Dev and Aara spent hours together, each learning about the other's world. Dev shared his knowledge of Earth and human civilization, while Aara explained the complex symbiotic relationship the Luminari maintained with their planet. "We do not build our world as much as we grow it," she told him, demonstrating how they use specialized harmonics to shape the growth of living structures. "All life here shares a common neural network, a planetary consciousness that we can access and influence, but never control." Dev was fascinated by their technology, which blended biology and physics in ways human science had barely theorized. The Luminari had mastered biological computing, creating systems that were self-healing and adaptable. Their understanding of quantum mechanics far surpassed Earth's, allowing them to manipulate energy fields with precision that seemed almost magical. In turn, Aara was captivated by human art, music, and literature, concepts Dev struggled to explain without examples. He found himself describing Shakespeare plays, reciting poetry from memory, and humming classical music while Aara's tendrils danced with excited colors. Through these exchanges, their initial wariness transformed into genuine connection. Dev found himself increasingly drawn to Aara's wisdom and perspective. Her silver eyes, which had initially seemed so alien, now expressed emotions he could recognize: curiosity, amusement, concern, and something deeper that he couldn't quite name. On the seventh night, Aara took Dev to a high plateau overlooking the valley. Above them, the twin moons cast silvery light across the landscape, while the vast sweep of unfamiliar stars stretched across the sky. "Your crash was not an accident," Aara said quietly, her tendrils shifting to a solemn blue. "The anomaly that brought you here was created intentionally, by my people." Dev turned to her, stunned. "What? Why?" "Because we needed to understand if humans were ready," she replied, her silver eyes reflecting the starlight. "Ready for the truth that you are not alone in the universe, and that our worlds are about to collide in ways neither of us can prevent." "Collide? What do you mean?" Dev's voice was barely above a whisper as he stared at Aara, the twin moon silhouetting her elegant form against the night sky. Aara's tendrils shifted to a deep indigo, a color Dev had come to associate with solemnity. She gestured toward a particular section of the star-filled sky. "There," she said, pointing to a faint red star that Dev wouldn't have noticed among the brighter celestial bodies. "That is your sun, as seen from our world." Dev's breath caught in his throat. "That's impossible. We can't be that far from Earth, the journey would take thousands of years." "Distance is relative when space itself can be folded," Aara explained. "The anomaly you encountered was a quantum bridge, what your scientists might call a wormhole. We've been studying your solar system for centuries, watching your civilization evolve." She led Dev to a crystalline structure at the edge of the plateau. At her touch, it hummed to life, projecting a three-dimensional star map into the space between them. Planets and stars rotated slowly, and Dev recognized our solar system among them. "Our astronomers detected the quantum signature of your sun 3,000 cycles ago," Aara continued. "We observed your world through microbridges, too small for physical travel but large enough to gather data. We watched as your species developed technology, created art, fought wars, and reached for the stars." The projection shifted, showing Earth in greater detail. Dev recognized landmarks, cities, and geographical features with perfect accuracy. "Why?" he asked, his mind reeling from the implications. "Why watch us? Why bring me here now?" Aara's expression grew grave, her tendrils now pulsing with anxious reds and purples. "Because we are dying, Dev. Our entire civilization." The projection changed again, showing Aara's solar system. At its center, a dying star pulsed erratically, its corona flaring with unstable energy. "Our sun has entered its final phase, more rapidly than our scientists predicted. Within 20 of your Earth years, it will collapse, then expand into a red giant that will consume our inner planets, including our homeworld." Dev stared at the projection, the horror of what she was describing sinking in. "Your entire species, your whole civilization. We've evacuated many to our outer colonies, but those worlds cannot sustain our full population," Aara explained. "For the past century, we've been searching for a compatible world where we might relocate a portion of our people." Dev's blood ran cold as understanding dawned. "Earth." Aara nodded, her silver eyes meeting his. Yes. Your world has compatible biology, atmosphere, and resources. But we are not conquerors, Dev. We do not wish to take Earth from humans, we wish to coexist. She waved her hand, and the projection showed various regions on Earth, deserts, tundras, and deep ocean floors. These areas, inhospitable to humans but suitable for Luminari with minor adaptations, could support settlements of our people. We would bring technology to help both our species, ways to reverse your climate damage, eliminate diseases, extend human lifespans. Dev's mind raced through the implications. But why me? Why not contact Earth's governments directly? Because we needed to understand humans on a personal level, Aara said softly. Political leaders speak for nations, but they cannot truly represent the heart of humanity. We needed someone who would see us as we are, not as a threat or an opportunity, but as people seeking survival. She moved closer, her tendrils now glowing with a warm amber light. You were carefully chosen, Dev. Your psychological profile, your work in exobiology, your openness to new ideas, all suggested you could bridge our worlds. Dev felt the weight of responsibility settle over him. The anomaly, it wasn't random. No, Aara admitted. We created it specifically to intercept your research vessel. The coordinates, the timing, all calculated to bring you here with minimal risk. My crew? Dev asked suddenly, realizing he hadn't considered their fate until now. We're never in danger, Aara assured him. The anomaly was calibrated to your biosignature alone. To them, you simply disappeared from the ship, a tragic accident. They returned to Earth safely. Dev turned away, processing the enormity of what he'd learned. Earth believed him dead, while he stood on an alien world discussing the potential migration of an entire species to his home planet. Our council wishes to meet with you tomorrow, Aara said. They will explain our proposal in full detail, answer your questions, and discuss how we might approach Earth's leaders. But tonight. She hesitated, her tendrils shifting to a color Dev hadn't seen before, a deep, resonant violet. Tonight, I wanted you to understand why I brought you here. Not just as an ambassador, but as someone I've come to value. The air between them seemed charged with unspoken meaning. Dev looked into Alara's silver eyes and saw vulnerability there, and something else that transcended their biological differences. You fear how I'll react, Dev observed. You think I might see this as manipulation. Was it not? Aara asked softly. We studied you, selected you, brought you here without consent. Dev considered this, then shook his head. You did what you had to do to save your people. I understand survival. But there's something you're still not telling me, isn't there? Alara's tendrils rippled with surprise. You've become quite adept at reading me. Answer the question, Aara. She looked away, toward the distant lights of the settlement below. The council is divided. Some believe we should approach Earth peacefully, as I've described. Others fear humans will reject us, or worse, see our technology as a threat and attempt to destroy us before we can establish a foothold. And what do they propose instead? Dev asked, though he already suspected the answer. A more aggressive approach, Aara admitted reluctantly. Using our technology to neutralize Earth's defensive capabilities before establishing settlements. Her silver eyes met his again. I have fought against this faction, but they grow stronger as our sun grows more unstable and our options diminish. So tomorrow's meeting is not just about our proposal to Earth, Aara confirmed. It's about which path the Luminari will choose. And your reaction, Dev, your insight into how humans would respond, may determine that choice. The weight of billions of lives, human and Luminari, settled on Dev's shoulders as he gazed up at the alien stars, the fate of two worlds now inextricably linked through his presence on this distant planet. The council chamber was unlike any governmental meeting place on Earth. Rather than imposing architecture designed to intimidate, the vast circular space mimicked a natural clearing in a forest. The floor was living moss that responded to footsteps with gentle luminescence, while the ceiling opened to the azure sky above. 12 Luminari elders sat in a circle, their tendrils displaying a kaleidoscope of colors that Dev now recognized as representing complex emotional states. Aara stood beside Dev as he addressed the council, translating his thoughts when necessary. For hours, they discussed the Luminari proposal, the technological exchange, settlement locations, integration timelines. Dev asked pointed questions about sovereignty, resource usage, and cultural preservation. The council members responded with remarkable transparency, acknowledging potential conflicts and proposing solutions. If we approached Earth openly, Dev finally said, humanity's reactions would span the full spectrum, from welcoming acceptance to paranoid hostility. But an aggressive first move would unite humans against you instantly. An elder with rust-colored tendrils leaned forward. Even if we demonstrated our superior capabilities? Your history shows humans submit to overwhelming force. Temporarily, Dev countered. But we also have a history of resistance against occupation that spans millennia. You might win the initial conflict, but you would never know peace on Earth. And if we come in peace? Asked another elder, her tendrils a hopeful blue-green. Dev considered carefully. There would be fear and resistance from some quarters, certainly. But if you approach us with transparency, with clear benefits for both species, and with patience. He looked around the chamber. I believe coexistence is possible. Not easy, but possible. As the council deliberated among themselves in their melodic language, Aara touched Dev's arm. You've given them much to consider. The final decision may take days. They left the chamber and walked to a secluded garden overlooking the valley. The tension between them had grown since the previous night's revelations, both aware that their relationship had evolved beyond diplomatic niceties. What happens now? Dev asked, watching purple-leafed plants respond to their presence by opening delicate spiral-shaped flowers. Now you must make your own choice, Aara said softly. We've repaired your crash pod's communication systems. You could return to the anomaly site, send a message to Earth, warn them of our existence. Dev looked at her in surprise. You're giving me that option? Even knowing I might turn human opinion against you? You are not our prisoner, Dev. You never were. Aara's tendrils rippled with emotion. But before you decide, there is something else you should know. She led him to a small structure at the garden's edge. Inside, a spherical device hummed softly in the center of the room. At Aara's touch, it projected a recording. Dev saw himself in the research vessel, then the anomaly, then his apparent death as perceived by his crewmates. Your world believes you died 5 weeks ago, Aara explained gently. A memorial service was held. Your family mourned. Dev felt a wave of grief and anger. You let them believe I was dead all this time? We had to, she said. If they knew you were alive but unreachable, they would never stop searching. This was kinder. Dev turned away, emotions conflicting within him. The thought of his parents, his sister, believing he had died in space filled him with anguish. Yet he also understood the cold logic behind the deception. There is another option, Aara continued after a respectful silence. Stay here. Become our emissary. Help us prepare for peaceful contact with Earth. When the time comes, return home not as a lost astronaut, but as the bridge between our worlds. And if I stay, Dev asked, turning to face her, what would that mean for us? For whatever this is between us? Aara's tendrils shifted to the deep violet he'd seen the night before. I cannot promise what might evolve between species as different as ours. But I know that consciousness recognizes consciousness, regardless of physical form. What I feel for you transcends biology, Dev. She reached out, her iridescent fingers hovering near his face but not quite touching. "Your mind shines with a brilliance I've never encountered before. The way you perceive reality, the emotions you experience, they're alien to me, yet I find myself drawn to them, to you." Dev closed the distance between them, gently taking her hand. The contact sent a tingling sensation up his arm, her bioelectric field interacting with his nervous system. It wasn't unpleasant, rather, it created a sense of connection that went deeper than physical touch. "I've spent my life searching the stars," he said softly. "Wondering if we were alone in the universe. Now I've found an answer far beyond anything I imagined. How could I turn away from that?" Aara's tendrils pulsed with hopeful light. "Then you'll stay?" Dev thought of Earth, the home he'd left behind and the people who believed him gone. He thought of the Luminari, a civilization facing extinction, reaching out across the stars for survival. And he thought of Aara, whose alien perspective had somehow become essential to his own. "I'll stay," he decided. "Not forever, eventually I must return to Earth, prepare my people for what's coming. But for now, I'll help the Council develop a plan for peaceful contact." Aara's joy manifested as a cascade of colors flowing through her tendrils. Two worlds, bridged by understanding. "It begins with us, Dev." As the twin suns began to set beyond the valley, casting golden light across the alien landscape, Dev looked up at the faint red star that was his distant sun. He had come here as an explorer, become a diplomat, and now found himself something more, a pioneer on the frontier between civilizations. Whatever the future held for humans and Luminari, Dev knew with certainty that his journey had only just begun. The universe was larger, stranger, and more wondrous than humanity had ever dreamed, and he would be the one to share that revelation with Earth, when the time was right. In the gathering twilight, surrounded by the bioluminescent beauty of an alien world, Dev felt not loss but possibility. The gap between stars, between species, between hearts, all could be bridged with patience, courage, and understanding. As Aara's hand remained in his, their different biologies finding harmony despite their differences, Dev realized that in losing his way home, he had found something perhaps more valuable, a new definition of what home could mean in a vast and no longer lonely universe.